Laws, great. What type of policy and laws?
Control the money.
Controls the money. What else?
That's pretty much it.
Okay, so controls what money?
Tax
Federal
money.
money.
Tax revenue.
Tax revenues. Very, very good. Okay.
Oh man.
So, have any of you ever had a job?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Okay. So remember when you went and got your job and you were going to get paid $10 an hour, let's say, and you worked 20 hours, so you thought you were going to get $200? And you get your first paycheck back and there's like $119? And like there's a whole 87 bucks or something missing, and you're like, where did that go? Well, part of that went to the federal government, and that's the taxes that you pay so that the federal government puts into work policies that supposedly are to help the greater good of the country, right?
Taxes are the price we pay to live in a civilized society.
Pardon me?
Taxes are the price we pay to live in a civilized society.
Yes. So, exactly. That supposedly are going to help our community, right? Because we take it for granted that there's a library here. If we can't afford to go to the bookstore and buy a $20 book, we can probably find it here, right? And how much does it cost us if we're here?
Free.
Free, okay? So, why do we have libraries that would give things free? We have them because we want people to read. We believe that it's important that people read. The more people read, the more intelligent, the intelligence level of our society goes up, and more importantly, the more understanding we have of other places, other people, other things, other traditions, other cultures, right? So we believe as a policy that it's good for people to read. When you walk out of here, and some of you get into a car and mom and dad comes pick you up, or you've got your own car, you're driving your friends, and you get out on the road, you just think the roads are going to be there, right? And you think the roads are going to be free for the most part. You know, but who pays for that? See? The general good, right? We believe for the general good, it's important that you have a decent road to drive from your house to here, to get here, right? Or for you to drive from your house to school. Or for you to drive from your house to work. You know, imagine if we didn't have government and you all had to get together and decide where to build the road and who was going to pay for it. It probably wouldn't get done very fast. And where are those countries where they don't have good governments that do that? Let's look at Africa. Right? In Africa, one of the biggest problems they have is they don't have roads. How can they go to school? How can they do commerce? How can they grow their food and get it to people where there's a lot of people in a city where there's a lot of people where they can sell their produce? They can't if there are no roads. So there are a lot of things that government does for the public good that we don't even think about it, but it happens. So government can be a very, very good thing. Lately, a lot of people have been saying that government is bad. You know, there's a lot of people that said, we've had it with government, we don't want any government, we're going to eliminate government, we're going to get rid of government. Well, I think a lot of government's not a good thing, and too little government is not a good thing. It's kind of like, you know, Goldilocks and the porridge. One's too warm, one's too hot, one's too cold, one's just right. So what we want to do is have government that's just right. So we have different types of government. We have government, for example, that takes care of your schools. That's called your local school board. And we believe, we've had this fight in the United States, we believe, as a majority of people, that the best place to have your education issues discussed are at a very local level. That's why you have a school board. And almost every local area has a school board. Then you have cities like the city of Santa Ana. Those are people who decide where the neighborhoods are going to be, where the businesses are going to be. They decide what we call zoning. So we have a city that decides neighborhoods are going to be here in the quiet area, and we're going to have business all in the noisy area, for example, right? Those are some of the jobs of the local, of the city council in the city of Santa Ana. Then you have what we call the state government. They decide on state issues. And what are state issues? State issues are whatever our Constitution and our federal government says are not federal issues. Our Constitution tells us what our national issues are, what our federal issues are. This guides what somebody who's at the national level decides on and makes laws about. Anything that is pretty much silent, according to the Constitution, is the power given to the states. And that's what people who go up to Sacramento do. They decide state issues. Another thing we've decided is at the state level is what we call family law. Getting married. Getting married in California is different than getting married in Nevada. California, you gotta, have a waiting period, you gotta get a license, you gotta do this. In Las Vegas, you can get it done right away, right? Because that's in Nevada, it's a different state. Every state has divorces. It's different getting a divorce in California than it is getting a divorce in New York. Adoption of kids is different in California than it is in Arizona, for example. Because family law, those things that are about the family, is done at the state level. When the Constitution begins, guess what is the first thing that the Constitution talks about? Article 1. Do you know what it talks about? It talks about the legislative power. It talks about the Congress of the United States. And in fact, it talks about the Congress, and then the second, right below it, the subset, it talks about the House of Representatives. Our Constitution talks about the work I have right at the beginning of the document. That means it's important. So the House of Representatives is important because we call it the House of the People. The People's House. Why do we call the House of Representatives the People's House? Because we are the closest piece of the national government that you will probably see in your lifetime, right? How many times is President Obama going to be right here? Okay. How many times is Senator Feinstein going to be right here? Who's here in front of you? The Congresswoman. The woman who sits in the House of Representatives for you. That's why I'm right there. Because you and I were tied together. And then I go back to Washington, D.C., and then other people like from San Francisco and from Omaha and from Texas and from Wyoming who are also touching their people go back to Washington, D.C. 435 of us in the entire nation, 435 of us. We represent about 700,000 people. By population, it's decided by population. We go back to Washington, D.C., and we sit in a big room, and we make the decisions that affect all of you on a national level. So there are a lot of things in here that says we can and cannot do. One of the things it says in here, Article 1, the Congress, right? Article 1, Section 8. The Congress shall have the power to set up the Army and the Navy, i.e., we have a national system of defense, right? And the Congress shall decide if we go to war. The right of having a military is set up in our Constitution. So, does California have a military? No. No. Does the United States have a military? Yes. Yes. Who decides what the military is going to do? Congress. The Congress shall have the power of the military. The president, it goes on to say in here under the president, he comes much later in the Constitution. Just want to point that out in case you don't understand who's more important. Okay? Comes much later in the Constitution. By the way, if I'm you and you're me in the collective, then you're more important than the president. See? This is what you have to understand today. You have the power to be more important than the president. Yeah, the Constitution says so. Okay, so we decide about the military. We, the Congress. We, the people. And the president directs. He just directs the military. There's a big difference. We make the military. He directs the military. If we don't make the military, what does he direct? Nothing. That's why when that man who said, what's the power that I have? He said, you have the power of the money. Yeah, because to have a military, guess what? It takes money. So when we say policy, what do we mean by policy? We mean, what do we want to do? What do we want to do as a nation? Do we want to have a military? The Constitution tells us we should. How big is the military? Who decides? Congress. How much do we pay our military? Who decides? Congress. Whether they get to fly an airplane or 4 airplanes or 30 airplanes or 100 airplanes, who decides? Congress. How many air bases we're going to have, how many Navy ships we're going to have, whether we're going to have nuclear weapons, who decides? Congress. Now the Congress works by committee. In other words, can you imagine if we had 435 people in the same room all trying to make this decision in the majority? I mean, even if we all got you together in a room like we have right now and you had to decide on something, it would be very difficult, right? You'd all want to talk about it. You'd all want to be heard. You'd all have to take votes. It would take a long time, right? So can you imagine if you had 435 people? Way too many people. So we do most of our work by committee. And the people who are in the Congress decide who's going to be on what committee. I happen to sit on 3 committees. That's a lot of committees to sit on. I sit on the Military Committee, I sit on the Homeland Security Committee, and I sit on the Economic Committee. So my specialties in the Congress are nuclear warfare. That's what I do. Every day when I go to Washington, D.C., I decide who the bad guys are and make sure we're the good guys and figure out how we make sure that there are less nuclear weapons, but that there are powerful nuclear weapons, and that we never use our nuclear weapons, and that nobody else ever uses our nuclear weapons. Because nuclear weapons, unless you have not heard, are not a very good thing to use, right? Basically, they annihilate things, like people. So my job in the Congress is about nuclear warfare. That's what I work in. But I also have to do everything else. Transportation for Orange County, education to the extent that the federal government's involved, how clean your air is that you're breathing, how clean the water is that's coming through your pipes to your houses, the environment as a whole, whether we do space exploration or not, whether we have national parks. Have any of you been to Yosemite, for example? Yeah. Awesome, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Did you know that if we did not make Yosemite a national park, there would be hotels and buildings and high-rises and apartments and everything all over the place there? Now, would you want that? No. There are certain places that are just so beautiful that we want to make sure we save them for all Americans in the future to get the opportunity to go and see them. Those are called national parks. So all those types of things are dictated to us through the Constitution. That's the job that I do. I go to Washington, I hang out with you guys, you tell me what I should be doing, I go back to Washington, D.C., representing you, I sit in committee, I tell people what I think we need to be doing, we take votes on it, policy, we take votes on policy, we put it to the whole Congress, all 435 members, and then the 100 senators, and the president must sign it, and that's how we get laws. And we have laws that are policy, and we have laws about money, putting money into policy. I'll give you an example. Let's say we pass a policy that says every student will get a free education at the university. Imagine if we passed a policy like that, right? That's a policy. Everyone will get a 4-year education for free. But what if we don't put the money for that? Is the policy any good? Right? It's like put your money where your mouth is, right? So we have 2 types of bills. policy and then money for policy. Don't ever be surprised. Follow the money. Someone can tell you, I love education. But if they vote no money for education, what does that tell you? Don't love education, right? So these are the things we have to understand. Okay, I think I've talked enough about what I do. Now maybe you guys can ask me some questions that might be important to you. Any questions? Any policies, any issues, anything you're unclear about, anything you want to know about?
How is it like, how does it that you're like, how does it feel to be like the first, like, congresswoman representing us?
Yeah.
And representing Senate as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I told you there are 435 members in the House of Representatives. About 17% are women, so there aren't a lot of women. About less than 5% are Latinos, so there's not a lot of Latinos. And mostly there's, I think, 7 Latinas in total in the Congress out of 435 plus 100 senators plus a president, right? 536 people making your decisions. So it's a very, very small amount. It's even more interesting that I would come from Orange County, because Orange County is traditionally not known for having women politicians. Think about it. I mean, how many have you seen? Not too many, right? And it's also traditionally not known for having too many Hispanics politicians. And it's also traditionally not known for having too many Democrats, and I happen to be a Democrat, right? So the combination of a woman, Democrat, Hispanic, pretty slim chances that I would be elected. So how does it feel? It feels great. It feels great. I get to go in there and I get to fight for all the things I think are important for this community and for America, right? And here's the other thing. My younger sister is also a congresswoman. In the history of the United States, there have only been 2 women who are related to each other in any way, like a mom and a daughter, or an aunt and a niece, or whatever. And it happens to be 2 sisters, and we happen to serve at the same time. That's historic, because there are not that many women in the Congress. There's lots of people who are related in the Congress, men and men related all day long. The Kennedys, you know, the Diaz-Balart brothers, the Levin brothers, the Udalls. I mean, the list goes on and on. Women, Linda Sanchez and Lorreta Sanchez. Big deal. It's a big, big deal. What else?
I have one.
Yeah.
I can imagine that you probably thought about a million other things to do when you grew up. When did you suddenly decide you wanted to be a congresswoman?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, you know, I grew up in a Mexican family, okay? Like a real Mexican family. Like, I know how to make tortillas and tamales and everything else, okay? And luckily I had a dad who wanted all of his kids to do well. So education, 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 you know, and I grew up at a time when your dad had to sign what classes you took in the secondary school and junior high and in high school. Science and math and my father had an idea of what each of his 7 kids would be when they grew up. He had us all labeled. My older brother was going to be a doctor, medical doctor. I was going to be a scientist on a spaceship. Yeah. He had a role for each of us. So I grew up in math and science. And when I was at college, I took an economics class and I really, really liked it. And I switched my major from science to economics. And then I had to go tell my dad. Dad, today I decided to be somebody else. I said, you know, I love science, but I like economics more, and so I'm going to take economics, Dad, if that's okay with you. And my father said, oh, I knew it all along. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean you knew it all along? And he said, well, when you used to play Barbies, when you were a little girl and you used to play Barbies, you were always the banker Barbie. He said, you always have liked money. You know? So I became a banker. That's what I became. So I was a banker, I was in the business world, I didn't care much for government. It's true. You know, because I didn't understand the importance of it, first of all. Because my congressperson had come and said, hey, do you know what a congressperson does? But one day I was working on an issue, and I wanted to change the world. It was an education issue. So somebody told me, go see your congressman. So I went over to my congressman's office, and he refused to meet with me. Refused. They told me he doesn't care about education. So I went home, and I said to my family, I'm going to run for Congress. And this is how I ran for Congress. And I won, even though they said it was never going to happen. So that's how I got involved. Now my sister, the other politician, the other congresswoman, she's a lawyer, and she was a civil rights lawyer, you know, so she was always political, but she's younger, you know. So she always wanted to, like, get involved and do all of that. Me, I just wanted to make money. But I changed. What else? Yes?
How difficult was it for you to break into politics, and what were some of the issues or hurdles you had to jump to get there?
How difficult was it to break? It's very difficult. It's very difficult to break into politics. You know why? Because the old guard controls it. Who's the old guard? The people who are already there. Who are the people who are already there? Well, they're not Hispanic, they're not Democrats, and they're not women. At least in Orange County, you know. So I didn't. The political thing was totally foreign to me. So how difficult it was? It was very difficult because, you know, there's all the unwritten rules. You think that just because you're smart and you can speak and you have good policy ideas that you should run, right? And be a politician. So it doesn't work that way. There are plenty of people who have not won their election. You have to win an election. To win an election, you have to convince people to come to vote. And you have to convince them to vote for you. To do that, you need to have money. You need to have smart policy ideas. They need to know who you are. It's very difficult to do. And the traditional machinery of politics is in the hands of people who are already there. And they're not going to give it to you. So I had to construct my own. You know, that's the difference. But I did. One, because I was a banker, I knew people who had money, so I could run my election, right? Secondly, I had organized before. I was a good organizer. My mom was a good community activist organizer. She was a teacher, and she was always doing organizing, right? So we did that. Then I had free volunteers. It's called Seven Brothers and Sisters, a mom and a dad, a grandma. They all knew different people, you know, so we worked it all hard, you know, free labor. It's always a good thing on a campaign. And the element of surprise. And plus, you know, I knew a few things. You know, I kind of knew how to, you know, try to figure out how to convince people to vote for me. So given all of that, I won. But traditionally, it's difficult to get in. The easiest way to learn whether you want to be a politician and whether you have to win an election. To win an election, you should volunteer on a campaign. Then you can see what it takes. If you're willing to do all that hard work and you think you're pretty good at it, then you learn by working on people's campaigns, and then you can get ready to run your own. I mean, I always tell people, you want to be a politician, you better go work on a campaign. Because you need to know whether you can do all of that. When people are saying slimy things about you and all sorts, you need to know whether you have the fortitude to stand up. You learn that by working on hard campaigns. I make decisions every day that change people's world. That's a real positive thing. I think if we have to invest, education is one of the primary areas. Another area that I think is incredibly important for us to invest in our people is in our health. In our health. Because believe me, you guys are young. You don't even feel what it is like to be sick or, you know, to be falling apart when you get older, etc. If you don't have, and I know, you know, when I was young, I used to hear this all the time, and, you know, I don't know, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. When you can't walk up those stairs to come down here, it limits your life. So your health. So I think Americans, if there's some places I would invest education and the health of America. That's why I voted for Obamacare, for example. Because Obamacare is going to fundamentally open up the healthcare system to people who have never had access to it before, either because it didn't exist in the neighborhood or because it was too expensive to get. Okay? So I think it's very important. So just on the top of it, if it's an education, if it's a tax that really is going to go to education and help us, you know, then I would say I'm probably voting for it. But let me get you some information so you can make informed decisions, and the people who you talk to can make informed decisions on that. The first 10 amendments to this Constitution, do you know what those are? The Bill of Rights. What does the Bill of Rights say? The First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise there or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or right of for the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievance. That fifth one is very important. Do you know what that means? To petition the government for a redress of grievance. That means if you don't like something that's going on, you can come and talk to me. You see? That's what that means. Why? Because government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. Have fun, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Alright guys, so what we're going to learn about is the First Amendment. Yeah! Alright, does anyone remember what George said about the First Amendment?
We the people of the United States.
Preamble. Good try.
It's actually very important.
It is very important as well.
Freedom of religion.
You got religion, you got speech, you got
Assembly.
Very rarely broken in times of war.
press, we got press.
Petition.
Right to petition and right to assembly, that's it.
Oh, it's broken in times of war.
These are the questions I want you to consider.
Okay.
What are the Bill of Rights? Or what's the Bill of Rights? Can you name a few of the rights that they protect beyond the First Amendment? What are some other ones that are in the Bill of Rights?
Right to bear arms.
Right to bear arms, number 2. Anything else?
Right to speak.
No, it's a right from
Quartering.
quartering. Alright. So, how many guys have ever actually read it? Kind of in class, maybe. You skimmed it a little bit. Did you think you possibly missed something important?
Yes.
Possibly.
Yes.
Okay. Alright. So, how do these rights affect your life? Honest. Alright, guys, I'm looking for an honest answer, so I want a hand up on this, and I want an elaborate response. No, anything more than 2 sentences is elaborate. How does it affect your life? 1.
Well, you just told me to raise my hand and I just served you.
Alright, the question is, how have these rights affected your life? How do these rights affect your life?
Well, for one, I have the freedom to believe in whatever I want, right? Well, at least I don't get like religion shoved down my throat half the time. And I don't have to, and I wouldn't have to believe what other people have to believe. If someone tells me to like believe in a certain God that would, for instance, allow me to run around naked, should I believe in that God?
That's up for you to decide, but we do have laws against total nudity.
That's for you to answer.
That was actually challenged in Berkeley when there was actually a naked guy on campus who was a naturalist.
But he could never leave campus naked.
Alright.
One more thing, I'm also allowed to
So
talk
you
without
can't.
getting shot.
There are challenges to First Amendment. And Scarlett, you had your arm up.
How has this affected me?
How do these rights affect your life?
I think we can. Well, I mean, like, I have the, I don't know, like, an option to go to school. I mean, I know it's mandatory from K to 12, but after that, it's, you know, I navigate my own shit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so it's
Not a lot to continue college.
okay.
Okay, how many of you have ever said something negative about a political figure or a leader? Right here. Okay.
Done.
See now, yeah, the simple fact, the simple fact that you're not arrested or put in jail for saying that is freedom of speech. Like in Malaysia where I grew up, you can't talk about your leaders. You could be put in jail. You could be put away. You could disappear. Yes, that's
Asian
very
countries.
true. So if any of you have ever said anything like derogatory or whatever about the past president or political figure, you have managed to exercise your freedom of speech. So that's immediately how it's affected you.
First Amendment. You should be able to petition your government, especially at the local level, to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that is something that you guys definitely.
Yeah, you can petition your local government. You can remember, the police are getting paid by your tax money. So you can petition a congressperson, or actually you can petition a local person to actually make your place safer. Now there are also times in which when a local community did not uphold a congressional law. For example, when there was segregation and when segregation first became unconstitutional. There were a lot of cities and towns in the South that decided that they did not want to integrate their schools. And the local government all decided to do that. So what happened is you had to petition the federal government to bring in federal troops, National Guard people, to come in and make sure that the local people uphold the law. So that's a situation you can look at, is that if there is a fundamental constitutional right that's not being upheld at your local level, and you can't get local help with it, you can petition federal, but it becomes a much bigger issue.
Yeah, and so like, where is like the one place that you guys have access to on a bi-weekly basis, so every 2 weeks, to actually bring these issues up in front of City Council? So when you guys, if this is an issue, like you can actually fill out a green sheet. There's public comments for general public comments. You can have about 2 minutes to bring up issues like this, very specifically address the council members to actually look into it. And the chief of police is there too, so he would be someone who would immediately be able to address it to say, maybe you want more foot patrols actually in the area rather than having police officers just standing on a corner.
And that is community-oriented policing. There have been a lot of other tough neighborhoods that it has worked. I was watching a documentary on Brazil and how Brazil is one of the most violent countries in the world. I mean, they make Townsend look like a child's play because they've got people like, it's a very high density, very poor areas. People are walking around with submachine guns. Gangs are like gunning each other down. Kids are getting killed every day. The police didn't do anything because some of them were being paid off, and they were also very scared. But the thing is, Brazil suddenly now Rio is going to have the next Olympics, so they have to change their image. So what they did is they got their whole police together. There's 2 levels of police. There's actually police who are like militaristic, who actually goes in there and shoots everybody. And there's been like really big casualties even amongst like the kids. But there's another level of police that goes in there every day, walks house to house, talking to the neighbors, walking in the community. And that's what you're going to need in an area like Townsend. You're going to need like the beat cop that walks and knows who the neighbors are, who knows who the people are. Now, Nelson, if you're really serious about this, you're going to have to go to every council meeting and say the same message and ask the same thing every time, because it has got to be persistent. If you just go there one time and say that, they'll be all like, oh, okay, but then you won't have follow-up. But if you go there, every council meeting, you're up there, you're saying, hey, Townsend Raid needs to be safer. You guys need to do something. United Communities Lighting. You say that 6 times you go up there, they're gonna do something.
Is it like possible for me to like show them evidence?
Yes.
Like, I mean, if I reported them?
You can show a picture or you can give them pictures. Because remember, but you have to do it. You can't just do it one time. You got to go, if that is something you're passionate about, every council meeting you step up there and you go. Yeah. Or you get someone else next to you, get 2 or 3 people. So you 3. It may be like a broken record, but that's how you're going to get things done.
Yes, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Sir Nelson. One of the other things you should also know is most modern police cop cars also have GPS tracking in the car. So they're actually able to monitor who's not patrolling. So this is an issue that can be done kind of citywide to see if there are patterns where certain police officers take breaks and just stop and don't do anything for reported amounts of times. And that should be available.
Yeah. Too. And if you want the next meeting, the next Teen Civics, we can help you like make your speech.
Because you go with you. I mean, we've done that.
Because yeah.
We can do that.
So what you want to do is you don't want to criticize. You want to ask questions. Suggest. You want to ask, maybe some lighting. Never present a problem in which you cannot present a solution. So if you're going to present your congresswoman with a problem, think about some possible solutions that they can do for you.
And look at the police officers as partners, not necessarily someone that's an enemy in there. It's like it's somebody you want to work with to improve the process. Because there are good cops out there that really do want to do like all that necessary work, but they don't really have the community push to go through. Other people just kind of want to sit around. There's always that dynamic working too. Alright, so this is the one we're working on today, the First Amendment. Yes, the good old First Amendment. That's why it comes first. Anyone know why? Lorreta Sanchez alluded to it.
Because it was the first idea that they had that was different from the British regime, right?
Usually, whenever in a document, whatever comes first, usually a little more important because it's what you think of first. So, actually, we already kind of spent a lot of time talking about what it does, but I do want to make sure that you guys know each and every, like, how each and every one of the little rules in here applies. So, Nathan, would you want to go through the first clause?
All right, so it says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion.
All right, page 21, guys, page 21.
This is the freedom of religion, right?
So that's what Scientology's doing.
Yeah,
yes,
freedom of
and,
religion.
you know,
So let's talk about that.
I mean, this is what allows you basically to practice religion as you see appropriate, as to how you feel.
For yourself and
exactly.
And not be forced to be told what to believe in.
Exactly. It creates a separation, in essence, from the state being able to tell you what religion you can practice.
But
Scientology is actually an interesting one because I lived in Germany for a long time, and in Germany, where this right is understood in a lot of ways, isn't as well-founded in this context. But Scientology is challenged in the courts there as a cult versus a religion, right? But here in the United States, we have this ability to sort of divide the two and make sure that we understand that it's a religion that can be practiced freely in that.
And we actually have a pretty healthy respect for cults in the U.S. We allow people to just kind of go off and do their crazy things, and we're like, all right.
As long as they're not illegal things. There's also, like I said, so there is, you can practice your religion as long as it does not violate other rights of a person. So for example, like no child brides, you know. Some religious, like the Branch Davidians, decided that they were going to have a bunch of guns that violates a certain level of that. One that came under a lot of attack, and it had a federal case, was Native American religions and peyote. And peyote. That is actually constitutional. It was their constitutional right. So if they are Native American, they can do peyote as part of their religion.
So, like, what if their thing is to like sacrifices and like?
That's another one. Satanism is also an actual and a religion in America.
So they're allowed to do it because
no. I think, but no, they can't sacrifice animals because there are certain laws to protect animals within the state. There's like animal protection laws.
So they can't sacrifice animals, but they're allowed to.
Yeah, there might be like they might be able to sacrifice chickens or certain things, but not other stuff. You know. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know how freedom of speech. You know how like you don't want to inflict on other people.
Like, what do you mean?
Like, you shouldn't, like, you just said earlier that, like, you are not allowed to violate against other people, like, you know, like child abuse you were talking about? What if they were to violate themselves? You know how there's some free suicide lines and stuff saying, like, don't kill yourself? Are there laws against, like, doing that against yourself? Or anything of that sort?
Like a suicide?
Assisted suicide is against the law in just about every state except Oregon. I think it may be
So I can go to Oregon and kill myself?
You can go to Oregon.
Yeah, but that does not mean you won't get federally prosecuted.
The thing is, you can go to a doctor if you're terminally ill with like less than 6 months to live as prescribed by a doctor. You can euthanasia. You can go and basically have a lethal dose of some kind of drugs prescribed. This is like for people that have like end of life terminal cancer, just like basically, all right, I'm done. You know, I don't want to go through 7 months of chemo and then just end up horribly, like in debt and all that. I just want to go out peacefully with my family in my home at this time under these conditions.
But what? Oh, so just for those like if you're in that condition.
But that's a law in Oregon, but that's not. But it's illegal on the federal thing.
Right.
So if let's say you decide, you know, you're a terminally ill person, and you talk to your doctor and your husband, and the doctor, you know, that assists you in dying. But your parents are so angry at that, they can actually go on the federal level and have the federal judge like persecute your husband.
Guys, I hope what we're trying to show you is also that this document's a very living document. It's not something that's kind of like it's written down and it's all there. It's things that are constantly being like nuanced and like figured out all the time. It's always changing.
Good example of that?
All right, so, Nelson.
So if a person suicides, does somebody, I guess, go to jail for that person?
Yeah.
No.
Unless it was assisted.
I don't think you can get suicide attempts. I don't think are illegal. I don't know.
Well,
it is psych wards, but
Isn't that like a bullying federal code? So like they lead to suicide. There's bullying codes.
See, now bullying codes is another thing that's going to come up under First Amendment rights.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, what determines a bully?
Yeah.
You know, because there's a lot of things. Some people may, you know, what's the level? I can go and say, you know, call you a dumbass, and you're like, oh, okay, and I call you a dumbass, and you're sensitive, and you kill yourself. You know what I mean? So, I mean, see, that's the thing. Bullying is going to really start going into freedom of the speech issues, because that's where you're going to get.
The precedent for that is actually pretty extreme. As far as I understand, it's like imminent danger. So if I'm to tell someone to kill somebody, then they're, in a sense, I can't really say that. But you can say a lot and not really get into trouble there.
See, that's the thing, under freedom of speech. So the thing with the bullying is, if you go put bullying laws in, you're infringing on that bully's freedom of speech.
But then there's slander. The slander.
There's slander and libel too.
So then they could just be an addendum to that though.
Yeah, it could be. But see, slander and libel is still a subcategory under freedom of speech. Because, you know, most of the time you're going to go under freedom of speech versus slander and libel. It's like, for example, can a government that is formed by people who decided to commit an act of treason against its mother government actually have laws against treason? You know, I'm telling you, so you have to understand about what freedom of speech means. Does freedom of speech mean I can go up to you and say, you know, say all kinds of horrible things to you?
Scarlett, question?
I know it's off topic. Well, kind of.
Oh my god.
She's very
I'm not 18.
Yeah, go.
Can you have guns in church?
Yes, there are some churches that allow you to have guns, and the Mormon religion, part of the Mormon religion, and also in the Utah Congress, all congressmen carry guns to Congress.
Okay. What happens?
Yeah, it's part of Utah.
In Utah?
Okay. What happens?
It's dangerous for them.
They're the Old West. It's part of their tradition.
Alright, sorry. Does Jeffrey have something?
But it cannot be a concealed weapon.
Has to be.
What do you mean by?
You have to show your gun. Remember, the law is against concealed weapons.
Concealed weapons.
So technically, under the
can
law,
all walk around with a gun.
Okay, if you want guys, don't worry. Like for example, in Texas and stuff, you have the right to bear arms, which means if you legally go get a gun, technically you can legally walk around with a gun that's out and exposed, as long as you have a thing for it. If you drive down, okay, I've driven through like Texas and Montana, and everybody's got guns. They got gun racks in their truck. They got gun racks on their side.
How does violence work out with those communities? Is violence like horrible? Like
no, really.
I think because everybody's afraid, everybody else.
Now we're moving on to freedom of the press, because that's probably one we haven't talked about too much. So, freedom of the press, what does that mean?
Newspaper
publish anything.
Blogging, alright, we're going to tech over here.
Maryland.
We got Maryland. Oh, Maryland, what do you feel about freedom of the press?
Reporting.
You can report on anything, law, anything that has to do with politics. You know, nobody controls what you say. The government can't go against you. Recently, like in the beginning of January, there was a case where this girl created this WTF Forever 21. It's a blog site. And, you know, Forever 21 got mad because they were using their name. That's their name. That's their brand, right? So then they did this whole like case where they were trying to sue the girl, the blog, and they were trying to cut the blog. Like, you can't write anything because you're using our name. It's kind of, you know, legal-wise. And so she fought her case, and people were supporting her, like, but she should have the freedom because she's entitled to write whatever she wants, criticize whoever she wants,
you know. But Forever 21 was trying to be like, no, that's our name, you know, you're, you know, going against Canada. But, you know, after much battle and everything, she won the case and she has a blog now. So that kind of just says that, you know, even though you might get haters, you might not get haters, but you still have the right to write about anything.
Anything? It has something to do with what we're talking about.
Speech?
Constitution.
The press is supposed to be the fourth branch of government.
Really?
The press.
Actually, it's the fourth estate. Is what
Fourth
they call
estate,
it. It's
okay.
the fourth estate. It's the press is where it holds everybody accountable. It speaks to everybody, and it's supposed to present truth and allow people information, correct and accurate and true information. But if that information and the press is not giving you correct and true, accurate information, you can sue it for libel and slander and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Can I also talk about, I know there's certain cases where people got arrested on conspiracy theories. Like on the case, it kind of has to do with the whole freedom of speech, the freedom of press and all the things, because there's, when down in LA, I think it was case 13, or, you know, when a whole bunch of people were trying to, what's his name? But it's a school where, you know, kids weren't allowed to speak Spanish, you know? And so they would get hit and all those things. And the people that were trying to create this movement got arrested and they were charged. They didn't have anything to get charged by, so they built this whole, like, oh, this conspiracy theory. So does that kind of fall through with, like, the whole freedom of speech and all that?
It could be freedom of speech. It probably goes more under freedom to organize and peacefully assemble. That's probably more specific to that area. But I need more details on whatever the case was.
Just like the walkout.
Like walkouts? It's assemble.
No. See, but what did I say about under 18-year-olds?
Under 18-year-olds, yeah.
If you're under 18-year-olds, you are a child, which means who is your legally person responsible for you? Your parents. And when you are not under your parents' care, who is legally responsible for your safety? The school. The school. So that's why the walkouts were considered kind of illegal, because it was the people that would end up getting into trouble and being held responsible for your walkout actions would have been the school. Your parents would have had the right to sue the school.
But they were doing it for the school system that wasn't listening to them.
Yeah, that's why they were doing it, so they can make everything better.
But that's if your parents went with you in the walkout, then that's different, because it's your parents following you with the walkout.
Towards the end, they got their parents and everybody.
Yeah, that's true. Like, but there were other kids who were going on themselves without their parents going with them.
So we can still technically sue them?
Yes.
You guys also, as a creative suggestion, instead of doing your walkout, guys, you do realize every time you guys walk out of your school loses money for like you not being there. So you guys can also do sit-ins, so you're still in your chairs. You guys just like sit on the floor, and that could be an option.
And not do anything.
And not do anything, just sit there, like silently protesting. Then you guys are in class, get your money, and you're not actually like managing your like overall budget for your school.
And you know, first we'll have to get a break.
But they did
actually booked out.
Yeah,
That was sitting.
But Berkeley's adults.
Yeah, and we're used to pepper spray at school. We got an immunity. Alright, come on.
Guys, so you need to understand about, like I said, if you're under 18, legal entities wise, you are owned by your parents.
Not anymore. You're 18 now.
I own my parents.
But trust me, that means you can be held responsible for a lot more stuff too.
I own my parents.
So Marilyn, if you decide, okay, let me tell you about the beauty of being an adult. Now you're an adult. So if you decide to go, date someone who's 17 or 16,
isn't it consent?
Their parents can legally put you in jail for child abuse.
Like consent, like if
No,
they consent, like
no, they can still say
no. There is no consensual sex.
But after that, we basically said we're going to do whatever it takes, and these, guiding principles that have been in our history for, hundreds of years now, they've all kind of been flipped up in the air, and this has happened in your lifetime. So you guys get to decide what the reaction to that is.
There's been things that happened. What was passed was the president was given emergency war powers, which means the president had ultimate decision, not Congress, on declaring war on everything. Because what happened was we were attacked, people got scared, and when people get scared, they're willing to give up their freedom and their liberties. And because we give up freedom and liberties, we end up becoming like those other countries that we're trying to avoid. So you have to understand, it's very easy for you to give up freedom of speech when you're like, you know, afraid of a war, you know. A big thing that happened was the Patriot Act, and you need to understand that libraries and librarians were the first people on the front line protesting against the Patriot Act. What the Patriot Act allowed is for the government to come in and check all your library records, and then profile you based on your library records and your reading materials. So for me, for example, because I'm from a Muslim country, so I automatically am in kind of like there's a word for it, my aunt used to be an airline stewardess, so there's a word for it, but basically it means that you're someone from a country that's on a threatened list. So automatically your name comes up on certain things, my material. So I know I'm on a watch sort of thing, and but so like for example, like Dulce, if you decide one day, you know, you want to go and learn about Islam, just learn about it, right? So you go and learn about it, and then you come here and you check out books on it, and you check in the library. Suddenly, all your records are tagged. Because now suddenly, and maybe you went to this mosque and visited, and there was one guy there that was possibly linked, had a grand cousin in Saudi Arabia who was a terrorist. Suddenly, now your records are all suspected. So automatically, and then they can phone tap you. But for library records wise, they can pull out all your records, look at all the books you're reading, and profile you.
Get informed if you if you're getting
No,
tapped.
they don't have to tell you.
Not only that.
And that's a violation. They don't need to have a warrant.
That's because the Patriot Act.
Because of the Patriot Act.
Oh.
But let me tell you, librarians right away protested. And you know what most libraries did? And our library, what we did? We destroyed every record after 1 month. So after 1 month, all your records are were just wiped clean. I mean, we keep that now, but that's what we did. Kind of like a... I'm sorry, we don't have anything.
Well, yeah, you can see like the past 30 days, but
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, because they could subpoena your records without you knowing. And you can't judge people based on the books they read. I may decide to read a bunch of terrorist books just because I want to learn about a terrorist mentality, but that does not make me a terrorist. I might decide to go check out a book on making bombs, mainly because I want to learn about that. But that doesn't make me a bomb maker. I may decide to go get the Anarchist Cookbook, which is all kinds of crazy stuff, but mainly because I want to read stuff. So that's what it means, like freedom of the press and that kind of stuff. That means you have the right to read things and make your own mind up whether you're going to go blow it up or not.
But sometimes it feels kind of hard to be like incorporated into larger parts of American history because it is, you would say, old dead white men. Yeah. But you have to remember some of the words that were actually spoken in the Constitution still hold true today. So those unalienable rights and at the highest ideal, that's something that we're working towards. It's not something that was implemented there. It was like a grand guiding vision. And it's pretty much all our jobs collectively as Americans to figure out how that actually looks like today.
Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's your inalienable rights, but you have to fight for it. You can't just let it come. You got to understand. Yeah, you know, Latinos, you are the new immigrants and you're feeling like everything around you. But there was one time when the Irish were the new immigrants and all the laws were against them. You know, there would be like stores that would say no dogs and Irish allowed in here. Okay? Yeah. Every group, and then, you know, blacks. Every group has had to fight for its piece of this dream. This dream is a goal. It's something that you always work towards.
Yeah. And we're building it together, guys. And you're doing it every day.
You guys are doing it. You guys are amazing.
Perfect example in the homosexual community, right?
Yes, the homosexual community.
Yeah.
That's another one that's coming up.
Can somebody, like just any Jewish male can make a new religion, right?
Yes.
Well,
you gotta follow certain rules.
Well,
okay.
Well, what if somebody makes a religion that allows homosexual marriage? Then
they can marry within the religion, but they won't get recognized by the state. Now, let me tell you what marriage. Marriage is a contract. It is a state contract. It's a contract you make with the state saying, I am going to marry this person, we are going to combine our income, and we are going to give you taxes. Less taxes than we are singly. And also it's a kind of a social contract, meaning that because we are together, we are going to have children, and we're going to create a stable unit. Now, the thing that you think, instead of the state legislating marriage, shouldn't they be legislating divorce? Because it's easy to get a divorce. I'm divorced. It was very easy. Sign some papers, 6 months later, I'm divorced. Okay? Because when a couple in a family divorces, chances are the kids end up getting a lot of money from the state because you can't take care of the child. So think about that. Marriage, yes, there's marriage under God and religion and stuff. But in terms of why you have to fill out marriage for the state is that you're agreeing to the state that you're going to create a stable economical agreement. Let me explain what happens with polygamy. Usually what happens in polygamous societies is the older, most wealthiest men tend to grab all the younger wives. So the young men do not get the brides because the priority is given to the older men with the money. And they always keep taking the new younger ones. So the young men, there's no wives for them. So it doesn't work out really well even in like a marriage situation.
What do you think about it? What do you like about it?
It was great for other teens to know their rights and to know what's out there.
Well, our visit today with Lorreta Sanchez was actually pretty good. She came and talked to us about her career, how she began, so it was really inspirational to hear like how she was a woman, how she's Latina, how she like, her and her sister are like going for it and like doing it, and like it's pretty awesome. I think it was very inspirational.
Oh my god, it was fascinating. It was really fascinating because like some of us sometimes we're not exposed to like everything. Well, I mean, we know that the amendment's there, but we really don't know what's in it. You know what I mean? Like we learned a lot of things. It was fun. That's all I can